Hello everybody, and welcome to today's Toonkind at 12 FPS Sleep Talking. My name is Fable. I will be playing the Antlered King, and with me today is...
Hello, it is me, RSM Sessions, also known as Avi, and once again, I am playing my small problem child, Ruby, who likes to cause problems on purpose.
God, yeah, she does cause problems on purpose, but we love her all the same.
Yee,
She is good. She
yee,
is good gremlin.
good gremlin.
She's good
The
minion.
best.
She's actually a useful minion. Arguably one of the better minions that Antler currently has.
Ah, yes, the 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
12-year-old, don't you mean 13-year-old? Wink.
Wink wonk. Yeah, of course, 13. That's what she tells everybody.
Yep. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna make the first roll because
Wait,
it's...
let me. Before you roll, I'm putting the title card of the rolls
Yeah,
over
yeah. Go
because I
ahead.
want people to see.
I'm gonna roll an insight roll because it's been a couple months now
It's
since
been so long.
yeah, it's been a good minute since Ruby has come to Ruindal, and her and Antler have gotten to know each other, and well, specifically Antler has gotten to know this child. So I'm just gonna see if he's caught on to the fact that no, she's not 13. It's a 10. Antler continues not to care about this child's age. You are a child, and that's all Antler needs to know.
You are small, you are young.
For audiences at
That's
home,
all I need.
I rolled a 10, so Antler continues not to care.
10. 10 whole numbers.
Yep. So, anyways, uh, Abby,
Oh,
you want to start us off for this FPS?
oh boy. I can give me a moment to brainstorm.
Eee.
Hmm. E. So I think we start this FPS with Ruby asleep, kind of alone in her room. Well, maybe not alone. Oliver's probably sleeping by at the foot of her bed. Uh, and Ruby is in fact having a dream, or well, it was at first a dream, is now turning into a nightmare. Uh, I've been like thinking on like how Ruby's nightmares go, and I think it's always the same one. It's a long forest that stretches out in every direction, that winds and twists in ways that shouldn't be possible and yet is. It has trees that stretch up way up into the sky, and fog blocks the branches and the leaves. There's just the long trunks and the endless horizon. Uh, Whenever Ruby is in this dream, she can hear the sounds of wolves, and upon hearing the wolves, every time she starts to run, it doesn't matter where, doesn't matter which direction. She knows she has to run. She has to keep running. She has to hide. She has to make sure she isn't caught. She has to keep. She can't be caught. Not and and every time she has this dream, it ends the same. It ends in the voice in her ear saying the same thing, and she wakes up.
Uh oh. Uh oh. You're cutting out, bud. Abby.
Hello,
Hello.
hello,
Hello.
Fable.
Yeah, you were cutting.
Hello.
You were glitching out like crazy.
No,
Yeah. I don't know
no.
if that was
How
my end
much
or
did you
yours.
hear?
Not a lot.
No.
I heard some. I heard.
Curses.
I heard some. I heard up to you describing the forest and Ruby running from the wolves. And then you started cutting
Okay.
out. And then you started cutting out.
Dang. Okay. Well, I think the rest of my description was that every time the dream ends the same, the wolves catch up and they grab her, and yeah,
And then she wakes up.
and she wakes up.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I imagine this
And I'm gonna make. Hmm?
is not the first time she has woken up at the dead of night.
Yeah, this definitely wouldn't be the first time that she's had a nightmare like this. Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm just gonna real quick make a wisdom save disadvantage to see how she's doing
All right. So,
after this nightmare. Oh, never mind.
that's
That's a nat one
yeah. That was a nat.
immediately.
That was a nat one plus two. That's a three. Yikes. Not good. This was a
Oh,
bad. This was a bad one.
yeah. Yeah, this was a nasty one. Ugh. There's probably a moment where Ruby just kind of like sits up and like shoots up from her bed, and like if she could scream she probably would have, but instead she can't, so it's just like her doing some heavy breathing, just the and like her well, her long sleeve shirt. She isn't wearing her coat to bed anymore, which was a habit that she used to have, but has since abandoned ever since the whole the whole being sick thing.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
I mean, it's not
Yep.
good to sleep. Like, listen, it's not good to sleep. There are reasons there are pajamas because those are what you're meant to sleep in.
Exactly. Exactly. uh, I think like after she wakes up from this, she just quietly sits in bed for a little bit, and eventually she gets up from the bed with just her pajamas and socks on her feet, and she just starts quietly trying to creep out of the room. Because after a nightmare like that, there's definitely no desire to sleep again.
Yeah. Oof. Well, like always, it's a dark night in Ruindal. There are a couple of lit torches. I think, uh, at this point in the night, Ruby, your portion of the castle is kept dark. Most of the light that you see is coming once you reach the throne room. It's coming out from the library that you can see from a staircase leading up.
Yeah, yeah. I think first Ruby's gonna make a stop at the kitchen to like get a glass of water and just kind of drink it as before she goes to sneakily peek into the library. Whether or not she's successful in sneaking, we'll find out in a moment.
Yeah. Roll stealth. Roll stealth.
Oh,
Ele-
that's an 11.
11. You poke your head up just above the top of the stairs, and the library is a pretty uh opened up area, and it's not hard to see the antlered king sitting at a table with a few books piled up on the desk, and he's currently going through one. But the moment your head's not poked up for long before you see his head slightly tilt upward, and he doesn't have eyes, but you know that those eye sockets see you.
The void of the eyes. They perceive.
Yeah, by tune standards, Antler is a very emotionless tune, but by human standards, Antler is actually quite there are a lot of like emotional cues on his face since he is a tune.
Yeah. Yeah. He can do things that the skull would otherwise limit.
Yeah, yeah. So saying that, you see him raise a brow at you, uh, before he goes. If I'm not mistaken, real kind are meant to be asleep at this hour. Before
Ruby
he
just
goes.
signs can't sleep. Doesn't really offer any other explanation as she just quietly walks into the library and goes off to her own usual corner.
Antler's gaze follows you for a few minutes before he shakes his head and uh, eventually goes back to his own book for a bit. Can't sleep or not. It is better that you are in bed than up here.
Ruby like kind of looks like she wants to sign something, but eventually she decides better against it and just keeps to herself.
And
Very closed off at the moment.
I'm gonna roll. I'm gonna roll insight again. Six.
Oh,
I'm
roll advantage, please.
I have an idea of what happens if he fails, so don't worry.
Yeah.
13. What do I get with a 13?
Well, you have been around Ruby for at least a little bit to know her to pick up on some like nervous tics of hers. She's kind of rubbing her thumb against the glass of water that she has in her hands, and like she's just very closed off. Normally, she's a lot more open with talking to people, even if she's in her grumpy "I'm not talking to you." There's always a snide comment to be made, but she is just very quiet.
Hmm. I think this is like the Antler takes this in from the as he kind of watches her go to her part of the library, before he looks at his book and just very casually flips a page over. But as he does this, he says, I am.
What did he say?
I'm trying to. I'm trying. No, my brain. Like I know what he wants to say, but eloquenting his Antler is a bit difficult at times.
That is valid.
And I have to think ahead of like, okay, what do I want him to say? It's not easy playing an eloquent person when you yourself are not as eloquent.
I gently pat you. You can do it.
Okay. Okay, so he says, you know, you are no good to me, sleep deprived, and running from your nightmares is hardly going to solve the problem.
Ruby kind of flinches at that before she just sighs and like takes a sip of her water.
Antler is quiet. He's not looking over at her to see what she signs, but he's waiting.
Well, Ruby doesn't make any effort to get up and leave because even with the fact that yeah, sleep is important, she's not keen on going back to bed. That was a nat 1.
All right, I'm gonna flip a coin.
Oh boy.
All right. Antler. He's still reading his book, but as he doesn't hear a said real kind child that should be getting up and heading back to bed, as he's not hearing that happening, he's going to sigh and and put a bookmark on his book before putting it down, and then turning to look at Ruby, and just gives her a look.
Honestly, Ruby just kind of gives a tired look back. Just I'm not moving from this chair. You can't make me.
And I feel like this should be like a contested role. I just don't know what.
roll for willpower.
Yeah. Let's. Oh.
Gosh, what would that even be?
I guess let's do contesting persuasion rolls.
Oh gosh. Okay. That's not gonna go well for Ruby.
I don't know what else. I feel like it's them both trying to persuade each other to go do a thing.
Yeah. That's valid.
Like she's trying to persuade him that she's not going to bed, while he's trying to persuade her to go to bed.
Yeah.
That's a 19. Dang.
Holy crap!
Wow. God. I'm gonna have to get something. I'm gonna have to get something good to beat that. And I do have a +6 modifier, but like, Dice Parser has not liked me in the past. Has not liked Antler in the past. So. Oh, I got a 20. I got a dirty 20.
Dirty 20. Oh man.
I feel like these two have like a staring This is not the first staring contest these two have had.
Yeah. If Ruby was a toon, there'd probably be like that anime spark effect between them.
Absolutely.
But she is not, so it's just staring.
But yeah, the logger, and again, even though he is expressive by real kind standards for a skeleton, he still has a pretty damn good poker face as he just stares at you, Ruby.
And Ruby stares right back.
And it takes a long time, but I think since a 20 does beat a 19.
Yeah.
You eventually yield.
Yeah. Ruby eventually sighs and takes like a sip of her water before setting the glass down and very hesitantly standing up.
And Antler will, seeing that he is won, will slowly turn back to his book, though not before saying, "Do not leave your glass in here." Because you're not supposed to leave food in the library. Or really anywhere in the castle that isn't the kitchen.
Yeah. There's just a sigh as Ruby grabs the glass with a little huff and starts exiting the room.
I feel like this is one night of many.
Yeah. Definitely one night of many.
Like, I think I think after this, like, it skips forward to the next night.
Yeah.
How does Ruby handle this nightmare?
Let's find out, shall we? Where is that saving throw number? There it is. 9.
9. Still not good. Not as bad as.
Still not good.
Not as bad as the first night, but still not good.
Mm-hmm. Oof. It's just the same routine. Ruby gets up, Ruby goes to the kitchen, washes her face a little bit probably, and gets a glass of water. I think she just stays in the kitchen for a little bit this time.
Yeah. This next night, instead of seeing any lights in the library, you see lights coming from Antler's room.
Yeah.
Or coming from, or like peeking out from beneath the doors because he has them closed.
I feel like I want to make another stealth roll to see if Ruby can get by to the library.
Yeah, go for it.
That's an 18.
18. I am still going to
roll contesting. Yeah.
It's perception. 19.
19! Wow.
Ruby, you make it halfway up the stairway before you suddenly hear from Antler's room, "Go to bed, Ruby."
There isn't like any vocal things from Ruby, obviously, but Antler can hear like Ruby slapping her hand against like the side of her, like as she waves them around in frustration.
He hears the face palm.
And then she just stomps back down the stairs.
And inside his own room, Antler's whatever he's working on, it just has like the slightest grin.
uh, there's definitely the slam of a door.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How about the next?
Yeah.
How does she do the next night?
Let's find out. Oh, it's
Uh,
another nat one. Oh,
no. Oh no.
oh. Ugh. Yeah, I think. Oh man. Yeah, yeah. I don't think she leaves her room quite as fast. I think she's just staying inside and, well, if it's the second nat one, I think she's kind of crying to herself at the moment.
Uh. Oh
Yeah,
no.
rough night.
I think Antler is at this night. Antler's probably walking around the halls. Should I make? She's not really. She wouldn't be vocally crying though, so I don't think even if I rolled perception, he would hear it.
There'd be little sniffles.
That's true. All right, I'll roll perception just to see. 24.
It's a 24. Yeah, yeah. Antler, like as you're walking past Ruby's room, you do hear like the shifting on the bed and like the quiet sniffing sounds of just of well, yeah.
Yeah. Antler is all too familiar with the sound of crying for, no reason at all. So he walks past the door, pauses when he hears the crying, stops and sighs. And then Ruby, you hear a light knock on your door.
Ruby kind of jumps at the knock on the door and just kind of hurriedly rubs at her eyes with her blankets, and there's kind of like a little two knock on the wall as a come in.
Yeah, Antler hears Antler hears the responding knock, and yeah, he opens the door. He doesn't come in. He just opens the door and looks over at you, Ruby.
Yeah, yeah. Ruby's just kind of sitting up in bed with her knees tucked against her chest, and is just quiet, just like looking up at Antler, like what?
And Antler looks at this sight, and I think inside his head he's thinking, this is pitiful, this is pathetic. But then he sighs, and then he just holds the door open a bit wider, and while gesturing with his head for her to get up, he just goes, "Come on then."
There's like a brief pause before Ruby kind of confusedly hops out of her bed and like pulls the covers so that they're kind of like half made but still very messy.
Antler just waits at the door, holding it open.
Eventually Ruby starts moving towards the door. I'm like, yeah, she's just going. She's just going where Antler's leading, I guess.
Well, as soon as he leads her out into the throne room, and he goes towards the kitchen first. He doesn't say a word as he's walking. Maybe once or twice checking behind him just to make sure Ruby is following. But he goes to the kitchen, grabs a glass of water and fills it up, and he will hand it to her. Again, not saying a word.
Yeah. Ruby takes it, like, again, without a word, without any sort of sign in response, and just quietly sips.
Once that, once that's done, he'll start leading her to the library.
Yee.
No words spoken. As they reach the library, though, he'll wave a hand. He'll wave a hand and casting prestidigitation to turn on the lamp lights that are hanging around, and then he'll go to his usual spot of the library.
Yee.
Maybe grab a few books along the way, and he will make himself comfortable and begin reading. Though his spot is sort of like a corner booth of the library, so
Yeah.
there's plenty of space.
Yeah. I think Ruby go to her own corner for a little bit. Like just tries to find a book that looks at least somewhat interesting. But she doesn't like sit down for a little bit after she finds the book that she wants to check through. And she just kind of quietly looks towards where Antler is sitting, and I'm gonna flip a coin
Alright.
real fast. Okay. There is a very, very long hesitation before Ruby eventually starts walking towards Antler's corner. Would she do it stealthily or not? I don't know. I don't think she'd be as stealthy about it. But she does, yeah.
Whether she is or isn't, Antler does not seem to be interested in checking. He is just calmly sitting there reading a book. I'd say once she gets close enough, however, once she gets close enough, he'll be. As I said before, you are no good to me, sleep deprived. However, since it seems you are not handling your nightmare well on your own, would you care to talk about it? And he does. And he does look over at Ruby after he says that.
Ruby kind of looks a little surprised. And there's just a pause once again as Ruby thinks on it before she shrugs. She's not sure if she wants to talk about it quite yet, but she does move closer, and she does move to sit next to Antler, like just on the booth.
Antler watches this and just sighs before turning to his own. Nightmares are often reflections of things in our daily lives. So the fact that the nightmares are not going away tells me there's something in your real life that you are not facing. Which is a rather cowardly thing to do.
You don't even have to look to know that Ruby's giving you like a pout.
If you did not wish for me to lecture you on these things, you would figure it out yourself. But since you have not done that, I have no choice but to intervene.
There's just a quiet huff as Ruby just crosses her arms.
No,
Being her usual grumpy self.
No, by all means, do not take my advice. After all, I'm only a 200-year-old skeleton. What could I possibly know about nightmares? He says this very casually as he turns another page in his book.
Ruby just snidely comments, "Oh, so there's a number for your age now. I thought you were just old."
Antler has not looked over to see this snide comment. However, he has reached over for one of the books that he had grabbed and slides it over in front of her and it is a book, and it is whether this is surprising or not, it is a book about nightmares.
Ooh. I think Ruby like looks down at it for a little bit before she picks it up and starts flipping through it. More out of curiosity than anything.
It's as the title says, Book of Nightmares. The first couple pages are actually a bit more storytelling vibe of as they retell different account of nightmares from different people, all telling a different kind of nightmare. Then
Mm-hmm.
if she decides to read further, it goes more into detail about what nightmares are, where they come from, how it's a bit more of a nerdy psychological of the brain kind of book,
Yee.
but it also goes into the
Yee.
tune logic of nightmares as well.
Ooh. Either way, even like books that would normally be boring for other people are very fascinating to Ruby nonetheless. So she does like flip through it and start reading as much as she can.
Yeah, it's but listen, I'm not actually I the thing is that I want to give good psychological advice for nightmares. The fact is that I
Mm.
myself am not a practitioner of that sort of thing.
Ye-
A lot of nightmares could honestly just be what they are. They're just a random dream that sparks a fear response in you. Other times, a nightmare
ye-
is are things from your own subconscious that maybe you've buried, or a problem you're refusing to deal with in real life that are manifesting themselves in your subconscious. And there are many
ye-
other technical reasons for why we have nightmares. And this book goes
ye-
over some of them, but I think it goes more over like toonish nightmares, which are a bit different. They aren't quite the same, as toons themselves don't quite follow the physical law that real kind follow.
ye-
A lot of nightmares that they have tend to be there's usually story behind a nightmare. A
ye-
more cohesive story, something that is usually relevant to whatever that tune's plot is,
ye-
or even what their style and whatnot goes into that sort of stuff. And as you're reading, Antler has just been quietly reading alongside you.
Aw. Hmm. I'm gonna do a coin flip again.
All right.
Nice. Okay. Uh, Ruby eventually sighs and puts down the book as she like looks at Antler, like looks up at Antler reading beside her.
Antler continues reading for a bit until you see his head turn ever so slightly, like he's looking at you through the corner of his eye, just at a glance.
Ruby eventually signs, I have nightmares about wolves,
Is that all?
big ones.
Big wolves. Hmm.
Oh,
And why do you suppose that is?
she kind of thinks on it for a bit before she answers with, because wolves are things that hunt people, hunt things.
Is that all that you think wolves are? Hmm. Antler will bookmark his book again and put it down. And since this is a corner booth, kind of, instead of making you move so he can get up, he just gets out from the other end, and he will walk over to one section of the library. With time, this library has grown a good bit, be it from books that Antler has bought or books that Ruby has stolen from the library. But some of them some of them definitely look like very old books, which may have come from Antler himself. Uh,
Yeah.
but anyways, he eventually comes back to the booth with a book, and you can tell immediately from from the cover on it that it is a book that it is a it's a book about, well, animals,
Mm.
and he hands it to you. He hands it to Ruby.
Yeah, this one Ruby actually doesn't open to read. She just kind of sets it down on the table and crosses her arms.
Antler just raises a brow at that, and so instead he will raise a hand and open the book himself, uh, and flip through a few pages until it gets to the section about wolves.
Mm.
And while yes, wolves are animals that hunt things, they are predators. They are not just predators. Predators is not just what they are. They are pack animals. They hunt together. They live together. They live together. They care for their pups together. They are much like any other much like anything else. They are things that are just,
Animal.
yeah, they're animals. They're living.
Yeah.
They're making their way in the world, and they're living.
Mm. Regardless, Ruby's expression kind of seems unchanged as like they read through that. She she has an opinion and she's sticking right to it.
Not even
She
at
doesn't like wolves.
not even at the cute wolf cub pictures. Because there's definitely
Mm.
pictures of cute wolf cubs there with their mama
Cute.
wolves giving them
General,
baths.
general insight.
Yeah, yeah. 14.
Yeah. Ruby has looked distinctly uncomfortable, like throughout this whole reading this whole thing. Uh, and Antler, you have in fact seen some of Ruby's scars, which are claws of very large animals. It's possible and safe to assume that maybe Ruby has had some bad experiences with these animals.
No, he's figured that. He's figured that, but he waits until he's sure she's read at least a few par- a few paragraphs in the book before he'll close it and sit down. Wolves are just animals. Whatever poor experiences you've had with them should not cause you to be having nightmares that keep you from sleeping.
Hmm. I think Ruby is kind of thinking on this because now she's pondering on like, well, why am I having these nightmares? What is the big reason of not sleeping well?
Antler
Hmm.
Antler lets her ponder for a bit as he's sitting down and getting himself comfortable. Um, and I think he looks at her and waits for a response.
I think eventually Ruby signs. I think I think I'm scared of being found.
Antler thinks about that. I imagine you will not answer if I ask by whom.
Hmm.
I don't think
There's
I
yeah,
don't
there's just yeah, there's just an immediate wince as Ruby just looks away.
hmm. Antler simply nods.
She she does not trust enough to give that information.
No, and Antler expects that, but it's been a couple months now, and Antler's had plenty of time to ponder and the scars and other things that he's seen, and just thinks he's been, you know, he's seen the missing child poster. He has seen the scars. He is not unfamiliar with the idea of a child running away from home. So it's not difficult even for him to come to certain conclusions.
Yeah. Yeah.
With I'm trying to think. With that in mind, I think what he asks next is then, how long do you expect to be hunted?
Ruby is very quiet for a long while before she eventually signs I don't know.
But you are still, but you're still afraid that you are being hunted. Still, obviously you are. I found another missing poster not long ago.
Ruby nods and she does ponder for a bit before she signs. Remember the 2 weeks I was gone?
I do.
I went to Pottingspan, town closer to Ruindal than other places. There's missing posters there too.
Hmm. Is what you're running from here in Eichwell?
there's there's an immediate I hope not.
As a response or as an expression?
Both.
Well, you are real kind. So what I assume the problem you're running from is in Furuma. But the fact that they are reaching out this far just to find one child says a few things. Either about them or about you.
Hmm. We just kind of lets out a little huff and sits back in the at against the back of the booth.
Take it from one who has experience in this. There is only so long a child can run.
Maybe just kind of like looks up at Antler questioningly at that.
I may be and Antler actually stops before he finishes that. And he actually thinks for a moment before shaking his head and going back to his book. Never mind. You can roll insight if you want.
Gonna roll insight. Gonna roll insight. 13.
13. Yeah, with a 13, I'm gonna say, when he stopped himself, he had that toonish moment of blinking at himself. Like it wasn't something he was expecting himself to say. Hello?
I'm just thinking. I'm
Ah.
having quiet Ruby thoughts.
would you would you a penny for your Ruby thoughts?
I think like Ruby is currently debating whether or not to be like, hey, you can talk about stuff if you want to. I mean, she is kind of just in Ruindal. It's not like she's gonna go around telling people anything. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think she eventually does say like, yeah, if you want to talk about things, I can listen.
I think Antler actually gives a huff at that, and a raised eyebrow at you.
Ruby just raises an eyebrow back.
Let me put it this way: every Toon is a child at one point in their life.
Ruby just nods and sits back against the booth again. Hmm.
And I think Antler is gonna let her think, as he will go pick up his book and continue to read in quiet.
Hmm.
He will let her do the ponderings. And I think, do we wanna do we wanna move on to another night?
Yee, another night would be good, yeah.
All right, and make another wisdom save.
Wisdom save. Wisdom save. Doot, doot. 13.
That's better.
Yeah. It's better than most of these nights have been. Probably sleeps a lot longer than she has these past couple nights, but there's still the waking up and the getting out of bed and walking around for a bit.
I think I think for this night, Antler is in his room again, but this time, one of the double doors is left open.
Mm. Uh, I think Ruby does eventually wander into Antler's room, mainly because she just, as subconscious as it is, Ruby just doesn't want to be alone and hasn't wanted to be alone these past couple nights.
In his room, he has set up. You notice the vanity. This is actually probably the first time you've seen the vanity be set up
Hmm.
on one wall of the room. In another part, he has set up like an actual table, and seems to be standing over that at the moment, looking at a couple papers, looking at a couple other items that are on the table. None of which you really recognize. They look more like some of them look like they could be like magic items that he's pondering over. That's about all you know from at the door, at least.
Hmm. I think Ruby does. She doesn't wait to be invited in because she's Ruby. She never waits to be invited in.
Yeah,
She
I
just kind
the
of curiously steps inside and is like looking over the things that Antler's looking over.
most of it is some of it is papers that have been filled out. It looks like it's papers that he's gonna need to take to Little Corner to. They're filing papers to basically submit to be a candidate for the election.
Yee.
And that's basically all that information that's been filled out. Uh, a couple other ones are a few things about just the town. Just the town. He seems to be reading over some. The items themselves, however, have been moved off to the side and are not at his attention. That said, speaking of his attention, though, the moment you're beside the table, uh, Antler does say, "At some point, I'm going to need to teach you how to knock."
Ruby just gives him a little cheeky grin in her very Ruby way.
And Antler just shakes his head a little bit before going back to the papers. Still having nightmares, I see.
Yeah, Ruby sighs and nods. He's like, yeah, it's been a problem for at least 3 of 4 nights. Well, 4 of 4 nights. So
Yeah, an Antler.
it's not like the song or dance has changed at all.
Yeah, an Antler sighs and hangs his head just ever so slightly before turning it to look at you fully and just going, "Is there nothing that helps you sleep?"
Ruby Ruby just shrugs and says, "The stuff I normally do isn't working."
I could cast suggestion on you if that would help.
Ruby just kind of snorts at that.
Antler does not laugh. He looks dead serious. He's a very serious skeleton.
Ruby just signs, maybe if I have a nightmare tomorrow, we can try that.
Very well.
Uh, hmm. I think Ruby eventually just kind of like looks at the bed in the corner of Antler's room that's been untouched for so long.
Antler looks over. Antler looks to where Ruby is looking over at the bed, then at Ruby, and then, upon making assumption, he just waves his hand and says, "Go on then. I hardly use it."
There's like an immediate gremlin grin. And Ruby instantly is climbing on top of the bed.
Yeah, it is. There is. Man, you know what? Actually, I'm gonna make a roll. I'm gonna make a roll because as much as I want to say it's covered in dust and untouched, Antler himself is actually is actually one to keep things clean, even the things that he himself doesn't use. So hold on, I'm gonna make a roll to see. What should I roll to see if he did it? You know, I'll just do a coin flip.
Yeah. Coin flip.
If it's a 1, he cleaned it. If it's a 2, he did not. It's a 1. The bed is clean. The bed is cleaned. It is not dusty. It is a big. Nice. It is a big. It is a nice big bed that the villagers that the renovators from Little Corner had brought in. Antler did not ask for it. The people just did it of their own volition, and so and he just hasn't. He literally does not have the strength to move it, so it's just been there.
It's just been there.
It's been there. In Antler's opinion, it's been taking up space.
Yeah. There's just like a loud poof sound because Ruby did in fact stand up on the bed, spread her arms out on her sides, and flop face first onto the mattress.
And if Antler had eyes, he'd be rolling them in his eye sockets.
I mean, despite everything, Ruby's still a kid.
Yep, so he is being reminded.
I think Ruby is like just laying on the bed before she kind of like looks towards Antler.
Antler is still working on stuff.
I think she's just gonna watch him for a bit.
I think he pretends not to notice that he's being watched, but after a while he will look up and meet her gaze.
I think Ruby eventually asks, I know you said you don't sleep, but have you ever had nightmares?
Of course. Once upon a time.
Were they bad ones?
Yes, they were.
How did you stop having them?
Antler, he doesn't say anything, but he's not. It doesn't look like he's thinking about it. But he sighs and says, "Not all of them you can get rid of. Sometimes you have to accept that they're there. If it helps. No matter how scared you are in a nightmare, that is all they are. They are simply something that is in your own mind.
Ruby has like just a pondering expression on her face as she thinks on that.
And
Because
Antler
it wasn't exactly the answer she wanted to hear,
Antler
but
Antler's
it
aware
is
of that.
the it is like the truth that I think she needed to hear, and like she realizes that.
Another trick you can try is perhaps in the nightmare. You should just stop running and face what it is that's chasing you. Because at the end of the day, if something frightens you, it is better to deal with it than run from it. You run from it, it never goes away. You deal with it, then you have the chance to make it leave you alone.
There's just another quiet nod from Ruby. 'Cause, yeah, that is a very good point.
Antler knows this. That's why he said it. He's 200 years old. God damn it! He knows a thing. He does know. Listen, despite his grumpiness, he does know a thing or two.
He knows many things. And for once, Ruby isn't being stubborn enough to not listen to them.
I think after several nights of nightmares,
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
makes you willing to listen to anything that might help.
Yeah. Now I'm just thinking of like Antler going back to working on whatever he's working on, and then when he looks back at Ruby, Ruby's just asleep, just face first on the mattress.
Yeah, that's I'm imagining as well. Is that he goes back to work and it's been maybe a couple minutes, and when he looks over and he has to do a double take because he's like, wait, and he sees this child sleeping on his bed in his room, the room that he usually doesn't let her in, and he's just like, wait, and he has to think over this in his head for a bit, and he sighs, and I'm gonna. He looks at his own arms and considers. And he's just like, no, it's not gonna work. Because I'm aware of Antler's strength and it has no modifier. So instead, I'm gonna flip a coin for something. 2. Okay. After a few moments of debating, he finally just lets his arm drop to his side, looks up at the ceiling, and sighs. And and eventually he goes over and carefully maneuvers the at least the top blanket, so that way it covers Ruby.
Yeah.
And in the corner of the room, there's a quiet clang clang clang, and Antler looks over his shoulder and just goes, "Shut up."
Well, one thing is about to find out about Ruby when she's asleep is that she's very clingy. So I think like as his hand like kind of like passes by Ruby, there's kind of like just like a soft subconscious fumbling.
Oh no! Oh no! Don't tell me she grabs him.
Just very sleepy.
Oh no! Antler freezes. apply. I think he gets grabbed as he was looking over to say shut up, and then he looks back and sees that he's been. Has she grabbed his sleeve or his hand? This is important.
His sleeve.
Okay. He freezes for a second and goes, no, 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 no. And I'm gonna roll strength to see if he gets out of it. Strength, which has no modifier to it. 17. He
17.
he manages to very carefully with his hand just kind of pry her little hand off his sleeve and and just slowly put it down on the bed so not to wake her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then just
the hand goes fumbling for something else and eventually just grabs a pillow.
that's fine. Antler's fine with that. He'll slowly back away, and then there's another little clang, clang, clang from the corner of the room, and Antler once again just goes, "Shut up," before going back to his to what he was working on. And I think the next morning, Ruby, when you wake up, do you have another nightmare?
Uh, Want to say no, but the dice might have something else in mind.
I'm gonna
Gonna
say you.
roll.
I'm gonna say you do, but for the whiz save, uh, do it at advantage.
Okay.
You've been given some advice now on how to handle.
Oh, I don't need it.
That's a 19. Ruby, tell me, what do you do in your nightmare this time?
I think this time in her nightmare, she was at first running like she normally does, but there was the like remembering the advice that Antler gave about dealing with it, fighting it, and in her nightmare, Ruby does turn around and fight with the confront it essentially.
I'm kind of imagining her turning around and her fists like turning into flame,
Yes. Yes.
and by the
Absolutely.
and just slowly the burn away the nightmare. And when you wake up, Ruby, it's daylight that's flooding into the room. Antler is no longer there.
Hmm. There's this very quiet shifting as Ruby sits up from the bed and is rubbing at her eyes.
You probably noticed that you've got a blanket on you now.
Yeah. Yeah. There's just like quiet confusion because she's like, wait, I didn't do that. Hold on. But eventually she just shakes her head and stretches her arms above her head.
Oh, you know what?
Huh?
Ruby, you find something laying beside you
Oh?
in the bed.
Oh?
Give me a sec. Hold on. Give me a second. I need to pull something out real quick. So if you would just un momento, I need to.
What's happening? I do not know.
I don't know what you mean.
Whoops.
I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you could possibly. I don't know what you possibly are talking about. No, it's not that one. It's when you have to find a file, and you can't find the file because where did you put the file? I don't pecking know. You should know, Fable. You made the file. I know I made the file, but I found it. Found it. Ruby, you find this beside you, along with a small note.
Ooh. I think like Ruby blinks as she's staring at the little necklace thing.
Yeah, for
She,
real quick for people who are just listening, what Ruby has found on her bed is a gold chain necklace, and hanging from it is a small it's about size of a large marble, gold round cage. It has nothing inside it. It's completely empty, and it doesn't look like it has any latches on it that it can open. but it's there, laying on the bed, again with a small note.
I think like Ruby holds up the necklace and lets it hang from her hand as she looks over it before she eventually turns to the note and grabs it to read through it.
The What it says is a small bit of writing that says, "Never be quick to burn a bridge, or the river below will swallow you quick." And that is all it says.
Hmm. Ruby kind of turns the note over a few times in her hands.
It doesn't seem. It just seems like it's a. It looks like it's a piece of paper that's been torn out of a notebook.
Hmm. Hmm. I think she kind of folds it and tucks it away in the pocket of. Well, I was about to say her coat. Like I think she moves to put it in the pocket of her coat before remembering she's in her PJs and she sighs before eventually just keeping it in one hand as she kind of closely inspects the necklace again. Is it possible to like make a roll on this at all?
I will. I will allow you to roll Arcana.
Kana. Okay. 20. Ah, now
Yeah, it seems like it's magic. It seems like it could be magical. You're not sure, but you know what?
it's
How about
early.
I'm gonna ask you to make another roll. I'm gonna ask you to make a history check.
History check.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 12.
12. You're not sure, but you think you might have seen this before. Like maybe in a book. You're not sure what it is, but it looks familiar enough to know that you've seen it in a book.
Hmm. The question is which book? Ruby now has a personal project of finding the book. In fact, that's probably what she goes to do as soon as she's properly awake and has breakfast.
Yeah.
Just goes to see if she can find whatever book relates to this thing, which
Yeah.
she has put on around her neck at this point.
I'm gonna go ahead and say since with the 9 on Arcana and the 12 history, it probably takes you a good part of the rest of the morning. And but eventually, it's probably you're probably like really tired of looking through books now because like, oh, where is it? And it's not until the very last book that you decide that like, okay, this is the last one, and then I'm done. That you finally find a picture of it, and this is the description you find. And the description says a spell catcher. This item can be used twice a day, and it can absorb any spell equal to the level. It doesn't say this on the description that I've just shown Abby, but it can absorb any spell casted at the level that the user is also able to cast. The spell absorbed can then be cast back at the target of the user's choosing. The spell catcher can only hold one spell at a time. Once used up for the day, the bright gold wire dulls to black. Blah, I can speak.
Oh, but that's so cool. Fable, that's so cool.
Yep. So congrats,
Oh.
Ruby. You now have a spell catcher.
Oh. Man, the moment Ruby knows what this thing is, there's just a big grin. she probably goes running off to find Duster to try it out.
Oh my god. What are you I can't remember if Duster can cast spells against people.
Yeah, I think he can,
Oh my god. You're gonna
I
have...
know Pass Without a Trace is a spell, but...
Jesus Christ.
Listen, you gave the child a cool thing. The child is gonna use the cool thing.
Yeah, just don't break the cool thing, please. But I think that is probably a good place to end the... to end today's FPS.
Yee.
That was a good...
That was a good yes. Yes, I love that very much.
They're bonding!
They're
Kind of.
bonding!
As close
Slightly!
as close to bonding as emotionally constipated people can get.
Yeah!
I'm gonna stop the
Yeah.
recording so I can go have dinner.
Yee.
And
Go
also-
eat.
Yeah, I will. Thank you all for listening. I hope to see you all
Yee,
again.
thank you for listening.
Bye!
Yee.